Hello, hello. Officially welcome from us. My name is Maria Butico. I'll be the facilitator of the webinar today. We are in the second webinar from the event December, the month of solidarity. 1 week ago, we had a webinar on solidarity and volunteering. Today, we have a new topic. We have the topic solidarity and service learning. We have people from all parts of the world. We have people from public sector, from private sector, from NGOs, universities, schools, and other type of institutions. We have practitioners in service learning. We have newcomers on service learning being the topic of the webinar. But before I go into presenting our guests for today and the agenda, I'll actually give the word to Romina Matei, which is the representative of SALTO European Solidarity Core Resource Center, the organizer of this event. So Romina, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Maria. I think you all know my name. You can see that I multiplied in this space. I'm sorry for that, but I wanted to make your life easier and to send you a direct link for the meeting. But apparently I sent my registration to the meeting, and that's why you have my name when you register. But please, as Maria said, rename yourself so you take your identity back also in this Zoom environment. Nevertheless, I am working in the European Solidarity Core, which is a resource center based in Vienna. We are a support center for the European program, which is called European Solidarity Core, which supports volunteering in Europe. The Solidarity Core comes from another previous program, which was called European Volunteering Service, which was in Europe until 2016. And then slowly officially from 2018, we have a new program, which brings for me a new value in what we do at the European level in volunteering. And that is solidarity, because the new program has a value in the middle of it. And I'm very happy that our resource center has the main aim to support the quality implementation of the program and to support the understanding of solidarity in Europe and beyond. And I'm very happy that we use the characters of December, that is the month of reflection, of celebration, of planning new ideas and new projects for next year. And also due to UN, which declared the December, which has the 20th of December, the International Human Day, we decided to allow 3 discussions about solidarity and volunteering in Europe. and beyond. And in this seminar, I'm very happy that we expand our understanding of solidarity, learning and listening on how solidarity connects with service learning and how solidarity is seen in Argentina and in South America. I hope you will enjoy this discussion, and I'm very happy that our special guest, Maria Nieves Tapia, accepted the invitation to challenge, to criticize, and also maybe to construct together the understanding of solidarity in Europe and in the world. Thank you very much, Maria.
Thank you, Romina. So our agenda actually have 3 parts. In the first part, we're going to have Maria Nieves Tapia from the Latin American Center for Service Learning. I also want to say the name of the organization in Spanish. I don't know if I can say it right, but it's relevant because the name says a little bit more about solidarity. It's Centro Latinoamericano for Aprendizaje y Servicio Solidario. And this name actually brings somehow the topic of today. She's coming from South America, from Argentina, and she's going to have the floor for 30 minutes. In the second part, you're going to have the chance to reflect on her input, also to share with us your aha moments and your questions. So please be ready with paper and pen if you have it available. In case you have questions in the meantime, you can prepare it, and then in the second part, you can throw it away in the chat. And then the third part, we have Mr. Pierre Seyle from European Commission, which is going to give us a short input on European Solidarity Corps, the new humanitarian aid strand. So we have 2 very interesting guests for today. We'll invite you to stay with us for the 19 minutes. And for our webinar to be efficient, to be important, to unmute your microphones, to open your camera if you consider possible. It's great for us to have the feeling of togetherness and to see some faces from time to time. And again, if you have questions, please note it down. Also, the speaker's input is going to be recorded and also shared with you at the end. I saw it is a question in the chat. So other people will have the chance to hear the input of our guests. But before we start, I would like to share a few words that some of you... Maybe you can unmute the microphone. A few words about solidarity for the people who registered. Some of you were saying that solidarity is universal, global. It's a value of humankind, a universal language, a net of global human rights. Let's see if we can unmute some microphones. Yes? Okay, good. Also, we had received expectations from you. Most of you want to know more about service learning, understand the experience from other countries, know how we can achieve solidarity across the entire world, and understand the similarity and differences between solidarity and service learning. And with these expectations in mind, I will give the floor for Maria Nieves Tapia. She's working for CLAIS, as I was saying, the Latin American Center for Service Learning. She has an extensive experience in service learning in her country and South America, and also, let's say, the world. I will leave her to explain more about that. And she was part of different committees and international networks in relation with the Service Learning Network. And I don't know if she knows that, but some of us, we call her somehow the mother of service learning. So we're very happy she's here with us. So you have the floor, Maria.
Thank you so much, Maria. Everybody call me Nieves, which I know is a Spanish name, somehow difficult to pronounce. So you can call me Maria or Nieves or whatever. I'm not really the mother of service learning. Service learning is a rather old pedagogy, even if it's an innovation. And as I will tell you later, UNESCO has told us that service learning is part of the education for the future. But the truth is, in Latin America, we have been having practices joining service and learning for more than a century. And then around the 60s, some US scholars baptized the creature as service learning. And then in Argentina, we rebaptized as Solidarity Service Learning for reasons I will explain. So I feel really comfortable and really pleased that you invite me to talk about solidarity, because for us it's a core value and something very, very important for us. I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation, so I will try to be on time and make it easier. So, what about service learning? You know, traditionally, from many schools and many organizations' points of view, on one side, there is learning, and another side is service or solidarity or volunteering. It's like the geometrical definition of parallels. You know, they never touch. In many schools and many organizations are two very different things. When we talk about service learning, we talk about an articulate activity where, like in the case of these pictures, these are students from an art school, which decided to use all their knowledge about arts to intervene in the oncology ward of the local hospital. So in the first picture, they talk with the doctors explain them with the nurses, which were the needs of the patients, why they felt that the ugly gray walls of the ward wasn't really something nice for the patients. So they decided to paint in the screens, in the walls, and use warm colors so they could make a better place for cancer patients in the local hospital. In this project, students are at the same time using their knowledge, learning how to do it in a real place, and offering a valuable service for the community. That's what we talk about when we talk about service learning or solidarity service learning. Service learning can take place also in organizations, especially in organizations working with youth. Any social organization may become a non-formal but learning space. Most of our organizations have a curriculum. Whether it's invisible or it's formal, there are some things we need to learn, and there are different things if you are working for the Red Cross or you are working for Greenpeace. You have to know different things, you have to learn different things to act in different organizations. It's not the same volunteering in a hospital or volunteering with little kids in a camp. In this case, I have used pictures from Scouts and Guides because the International Organization of Guides have embraced service learning many years ago. The Scouts are doing the same in Spain and in other countries because they feel the Baden-Powell pedagogy of service and all the things that kids learn in the Scouts organizations can be put to service to others. In the pictures, in Uruguay, for example, young guides use the knowledge on how to organize a camp to offer a vacation for kids in the poorest neighborhoods of the city who couldn't go outside with their families, so they organized a camp for them. There's learning applied, there's new learning, and there's a service. Another example of the kind of project that can take place, whether in organizations or in schools, around the world, teenagers native to the digital world are teaching us, the elders who are immigrants to the digital world, how to use new technologies. And in that process, if the organizations or the schools are smart in organizing these projects, it's also a learning experience for kids who learn to explain things that for them are so obvious and so simple, but for elders are not that obvious and not that simple. They learn to communicate, to express what they want to express, to develop their communication skills. And they also learn from the stories and the bonding with elder people. So through some examples, what we say about service learning. Service learning, as I said, has a centennial tradition. We can look for the roots in Shondui and in learning by doing only is learning by doing together for the common good. We can trace the roots to Paulo Freire, the Brazilian educator, who said that education is reflection and action transforming reality. And we usually define service learning as solidarity projects intentionally articulated with learning contents, with learners as protagonists. Volunteers, students, they are the ones who perform, who plan the project, who interact with the community. In the past 20 or 30 years, service learning has become a global pedagogical movement, from kindergarten kids to university students, from formal education to youth organizations and non-formal educators are embracing service learning. In Argentina, as I said, we added the word solidarity and we call it Aprendizaje, Servicio, Solidario, because in Spanish, and especially in Latin America, service is not exactly the same as solidarity. And there are very different kinds of services. So we wanted to be clear that the kind of service we wanted to promote with the learning was a solidarity service. Which brings me to what we understand by solidarity and from solidarity service learning. We talk about real verifiable solidarity activities, meaning working with the community and not only for it. We mean learners' active engagement and leadership in the project. And we mean also that learning contexts are intentionally linked to social activities. And this may include curriculum contents, being it formal or non-formal, research activities, reflection on practice, and developing of citizenship and job skills. Usually, if you Google solidarity and search for images, you will see the hands and the heart. But we believe with Pestalozzi that real education involves hands, hearts, and heads. And so with service learning, we have the heads, the hands, and the hearts. Which brings us to the latest document of UNESCO about reimagining our futures together, a new social contract for education, a document where UNESCO envisions what does education means for the future. And they say pedagogy should be organized around the principles of cooperation, collaboration, and solidarity. And it's not by chance that it's the first time, as we will see soon, that UNESCO mentions specifically service learning as one of the tools for the education in the future. So solidarity is very important for education, but what do we understand by solidarity? If you go to the Oxford Dictionary or Google it, it will say unity or agreement of feeling or action, especially among individuals with a common interest, mutual support within a group. Many years ago, 20 years ago, a US academic journal asked me to define solidarity as it was lived in South America. And this is the definition I came by, which is not much different from Oxford, but I emphasize that it's working together for the common cause, helping others in an organized and effective way. It also means standing as a group or as a nation to defend one's rights. Rights are not mentioned in Oxford Dictionary, and face whatever comes to you, whether natural disasters, pandemics, economic crisis, hand to hand. I think in the past 3 years during pandemics, we experienced the importance of solidarity and the difference it makes when people think only about themselves and their own rights and what they want to do. And if they don't want to vaccinate and they don't want to use the mask, they have to go for freedom. And how that has had a strong impact in many communities in the spreading of the disease. So when we talk about solidarity, we talk about the common good. But I would like to address the elephant in Zoom, which is the question you ask in the registration form. You were asking if solidarity is a European or a universal value. And I have to confess that coming from Latin America, my first reaction to this question was, what? And my first reaction was, but does really European people think that they invent solidarity? And so I was a little bit mad with you. But then I understand the provocation in the question, and I want to address it because I think it's a very valuable question. I mean, it's true that Europe, during colonial times, has imposed us European languages. So everybody speaks either English or Spanish or Portuguese or French, depending who the conqueror was. But it's also true that we had our own languages before European conquerors arrived. And I wanted to mention just 4 or 5 terms that are still current in different continents and express what in European languages we define as solidarity. For example, ancient nations in the Andes, in all around Latin America, use the expression ali causai. Ali causai in Quechua means good living. And good living means living in harmony with the nature and with the other people. And this idea of solidarity in the ancient peoples, in our native communities, was very strong and meant that they were able to organize themselves as communities and look out for each other. And many of those solidarity organizations were lost when the individualistic conquerors from Europe came to Europe. The same happens with Ubuntu, which Mandela made famous. Ubuntu is the principle that I am because we are. The same principle applies to Gandhi's Satyagraha, the power of love, the power of common understanding and common fighting for the common good. In Japanese, there are 2 different words for service or solidarity. One has more to do with the unity around the emperor, and Hoshi has more to do with the unity among people. But there are just a few examples to say the idea of solidarity is a very universal human value. Since the beginning of times, we have Cain, but we also have Abel. Since the beginning of times, there's been men against men, and there's been men working in solidarity with other men and women. So that's my answer to the question. But the truth is now we all speak European languages. So in Latin America, we either talk about solidaridad in Spanish or solidaridad in Portuguese, but we use the European words. That doesn't mean that you invented it, okay? So as a way to express this universal value, I wanted to show you this map with all the regional networks around and global networks around service learning. These are networks that no matter if it's the Asian Service Learning Network or the Iberian American Service Learning Network, it's the Central and Eastern Europe Network or the Middle East Network, we are all in solidarity working together to promote this pedagogy all around the world. And there are many countries that have their own national service learning networks. So this universal value, which is one of the problems we have with language. Why we can ask if it's European or not? It's because a question of translation, maybe. And in this article, I was asked sorry, to write 20 years ago, I was addressing the problem with English as the new global Latin. You know, most of you in 20 centuries ago used to live in the Roman Empire and everybody should speak Latin. And now it seems that all of us, to communicate between each other, we have to use Latin, the new Latin, which is English, even if it's not the native language of the majority of the people in this webinar. It's practical to use English as the new Latin, but it's also tricky if you want to analyze the meaning of the words, and especially with solidarity. We have a thing with British and USA cultural travels with the word solidarity, because since the 20s and the 30s in the 20th century, solidarity got identified in the US with the Communist Party. And during the Cold War, solidarity became a bad word in the US, especially in the US. But also in British English, it's not a very common word. So I used to direct the national program of service learning in Argentina, which is called, still today, Educación Solidaria. And I was very naive, and in my first conference in the United States, I translated my title as Coordinator of Solidarity Education. And I had to spend almost half an hour trying to explain to North American teachers that I was not a radical communist, but somebody working in the Argentinian government in a rather center-right government. But when in an American journal translated my title, they translated as support education, because they didn't want to use the solidarity word, because the S word was too radical for them. So we got lost in translation because service or care or support is not the same as solidarity. So when we use the solidarity word, first of all, we have to be aware that those of us who are not British or do not have English as a first language, we are not maybe using the word in the same sense. That's a first question. Many times I prefer when I go to Europe to say solidarité, because French know what solidarity is, and they have no trouble with the word. In Spanish, as in French, as in many other languages, solidarity is not a political word only, even if it may be used in politics. It's also a word you use when you call for, we need blood transfusion for somebody, and do you have the type of blood needed for these people in the hospital? And we ask for solidarity for that. So we use solidarity in a very familiar and everyday life way. What's the problem with being lost in translation and using service as a synonymous of solidarity? I want to highlight only two great temptations of service, especially when service is provided by the northern part of the globe to the other part of the world. The first temptation is to arrive in parachute, meaning that you arrive to a place you don't know, you haven't had the time to learn about enough, you don't really know the language people is speaking, but anyway, you want to help. So you want, and you say to the people in another language that you want to help and that you will do the best to help them. And that's a lot of well-intentioned actions that usually wants to serve, but we are not sure that that is really solidarity. And I will explain it later. The other temptation, and maybe all of you have seen Game of Thrones, and I want to spoil anybody who hasn't seen it, but you know, the Queen of Dragons, maybe it's the incarnation of the white savior principle, you know. She arrives to the cities to free the slaves, and she's very sure what the slaves should be doing next, and she's very sure how to govern the former slaves, and she is sure that she's the one who knows what the liberated city should be doing. And at the end, spoiler alert, it doesn't go that well, as you know. So the problem with this kind of service is what we call, it's the traditional vertical model. You descend on a population, and either you're an individual or a community who wants to serve, you are the one who gives, the one who already knows, the one who has the things the other need, you can do, and you have the active role. And then there's the people in need, the people who have to receive, the people who are ignorant, who are in need, who cannot do, so you have to do for them. And in this process, there are people who learn to help and people who learn to receive. And this is the root of clientelism, of dependence, of new forms of colonialism, because you keep those in need in a passive role. When we speak about solidarity, we put the emphasis on a horizontal relationship established between two communities or different subjects, when we recognize that we know some things, but we ignore other things. We cannot pretend to know how does it feel to live in the middle of the Andes or in the desert or in a former European colony in Africa. We have some things, but maybe we need to learn and we need other things. And we can do some things, but there are things that we cannot do. We can give, but we should also be ready to receive. And in fact, every people who has been volunteering and is honest with himself or herself knows that when you go volunteering, you learn a lot from the people you work with, and you learn a lot from the community. And that is a fact that it's not always recognized when we talk about volunteering. So when we are effectively living solidarity, we all learn to share what we have, and we all learn to live together, which is a very nice and beautiful expression in the Delors report from UNESCO. We have to learn to live together. And we all know in the world we are living, where social media exasperate oppositions, where in so many countries we are divided 50-50 against each other, where there are so many wars, we need to learn to live together. And that's why solidarity is so important. Trying to explain solidarity is not always easy, and probably many of you coming from the former Soviet Union countries during the Cold War have a very different conception of the word solidarity, because solidarity was a state thing, a mandatory thing, and it was not precisely a horizontal fraternal relationship. When with Kleist we started working in Central and Eastern Europe, one thing we have to learn from our friends from Bosnia, Croatia, Romania, and other countries was how to define solidarity in a way that we could all understand it. Because for us in Latin America, in Spanish, it's very easy to understand, but it was not so easy to understand in Eastern Europe. So we established this comparison between vertical philanthropy and horizontal solidarity. And I would like to say that the strongest difference is you can have a paternalistic attitude or you can have a fraternal attitude. You can recognize in other people, brothers and sisters, that have your own dignity as human beings, that have the same potential as you, even if they are living in the hardest circumstances, but you respect their right, their human rights, and you recognize that in trying to build with them a better world, you are searching for justice. You are not being a saint or a martyr or somebody who is Superman or Supergirl transforming the life of others. No, the emphasis in solidarity is sharing more than giving, doing with the others, learning from each other, developing empathy and prosocial attitudes, and recognize human rights. Because in the other traditional way, even with the best intentions, we may reproduce the cycles of injustice. And it may be even some self-serving activity. I volunteer because I feel well being a volunteer. And if you do volunteer because you feel well doing volunteering, you are missing completely the point. Not because you are going to be feeling well, but that's not the main reason why you go volunteering. And so this know-it-all attitude, I think is, and the paternalistic attitude, I think is one of the main risks of doing volunteering without a true solidarity approach. In fact, some colleagues from South Africa who have learned by experience the difference between solidarity and service, because during apartheid, universities that were white only went to the Black communities to do service. But the service learning done by those universities during apartheid didn't question apartheid. So what kind of service was that? So it was a huge discussion in South Africa after the apartheid fell during the Mandela government, if they were going to keep service learning. And they decided to keep service learning, but they said this: we have to actively choose between service learning as charity, as philanthropy, and service learning as social change. Social change is closely aligned with the social justice agenda, where the aim is to work towards a society in which individuals and groups are accorded equality in treatment and where there is a just share of opportunities and benefits in society. This is our idea of solidarity service learning, that to do a good practice of service learning, you should include the solidarity perspective, the social justice perspective, the social change perspective. Let me offer you an example, because this in theory is very nice, but I want to go to the ground. The engineering school in one of our national universities in the north of Argentina, near with the frontier with Bolivia, they have a career of engineering and natural resources, and students used to study. They had a course on solar energy and renewable energy, where they learn how to design solar energy devices. They learn the contents, they design in the computer a solar panel or a solar oven or whatever. They send it by email, the simulation, to the professor marked them, and that was it. But as in Argentina, we have been having service learning policies for 25 years, the professor decided to apply for a grant that the Ministry of Education was giving for those performing service learning in public universities. So with the money he received from the ministry, he proposed their students not only to do the simulation in the computer, but to go to an isolated community in the Andes and offer them natural energy devices to better their life. So as they are doing quality service learning, before starting the project, they visit the community and discuss with the community what to do. And they have offered solar devices in hundreds of places in isolated rural areas. But there was this particular rural area that when they arrived, they saw women washing the clothes in the creek in this isolated, very high mountain place. And they touched the water and they saw that the water was so cold that it really hurt. And them being kids from the city, they said, well, it's impossible. These women cannot wash in this river. So we have to provide them with solar heating for their houses so they can wash their clothes with warm water in their houses. So they went and make this proposal to the community council. And men were happy to have hot water in their homes. Women said nothing. But as they had learned how this Native American community called Kosha works, they knew they had to wait for women to express their opinion. And when finally women expressed their opinion, they tried to explain to these very nice kids came from the city that for them working together was their way of living, that they went together to the fields and they went together to wash. That was their tradition. And it was also the moment when they went out of home and exchanged with their friends the last gossip, the last news. And now here there were these kids wanting them to be locked in the house all day long with warm water. So students understood the logic, but still wanted to offer them warm water. So what they did was to build a communal laundry facility. So they can wash their clothes with warm water, but together. And I thought it was a brilliant example on what solidarity means in the field. Solidarity means in the field that you have to take the time to understand what the other wants, what the other needs, what the community is about, what their culture is. And you cannot give it for granted that your culture has all the answers and what is good for you should be good for the others. And that's for me, solidarity. So one last comment. I think serious, true solidarity may have three different dimensions. We have all heard this saying that instead of giving a fish, you should teach the people how to go and fish for themselves. And I have a friend who's been working with the poorest communities around Buenos Aires for many, many years. And he says that that's very nice in the poetry, but in real life, if you haven't eaten something, you won't have the strength to go fishing. And if you live in the middle of the deserts, even if they teach you how to fish, you won't have not either a creek or a small lagoon to go fish. And I love these images because I think it tells us three dimensions of serious solidarity. The fish is the kind of solidarity that's offering direct assistance to an emergency. When there's a flood, when there's an earthquake, where there's an emergency, where people are dying of hunger, you cannot make the training workshop to train them how to fish. You have to give them the fish. You have to give the service. And the service sometimes may be information, communication, how to prevent deaths, how to prevent COVID-19, even if they don't listen. So that's the fish. But then, obviously, if you only give fish, you will be giving fish for the next 500 years, as we very well know in Latin America. So we need to exchange and transfer knowledge. We need to provide the tools the fish rod, how to do it, how to be able to pick your fish yourself. And that's a very, very important dimension. But there's also the third dimension, which is you need to have at least a creek or small river or a small lagoon to go to fish. And this is the image for us of local development. If you don't contribute to local development, even if you provide training, they won't find a job because there are no jobs available in that place. Even if they try to build a micro business, if nobody has money to buy anything, there are no conditions for local development. So thinking about these three dimensions, I want to pick an example, not from Latin America, but from Africa. Very few time before the pandemic, I went to South Africa, and Rose University showed me this experience, this service learning project, where engineering students and students from different careers in the university had gathered funding to provide with internet connection and access for isolated rural communities in the northern part of the country. So the fish was the internet antenna, the net, the computers, the devices. But then there was the road. There was how to learn how to fish. And they train trainers in the community so they will be able to teach other people in the community how to use the computers, how to use the netbooks, how to connect with internet, and how to use these new digital tools. But then they also organize in this community center provided with computers a fair trade website where the community will be able to offer their products directly to consumers through e-commerce. I thought at that time that it was brilliant because it had this three dimension of providing goods, providing knowledge, and helping local development. And during the pandemic, I thought a lot about these communities because this project really changed these communities' life during the pandemics and make a huge difference. But it was a clever solidarity, and it was planned along with the community, choosing the local leaders to lead the project and to offer them the leadership of the sustainability of the project. So service learning done right from a solidarity perspective, we know for a lot of research have positive impacts in the practitioners, in learning to learn, in learning to do, in learning to be and live together. And this takes place not only in schools and universities, but also in volunteering organizations if they really organize the learning part of the service well. Just to finish, I wanted to mention, as I said before, that UNESCO in this new document says that the pedagogies of the future are problem-based and project-based educational approach, inquiry-based and action research pedagogies, and community-engaged pedagogies and service learning. So we are very proud in class that we have been working for the past 20 years in what now happens to be the education of the future. But I think that for us resonate a lot and has everything to do with solidarity is UNESCO underlines that service learning to be done properly must be done in a spirit of humility, free of paternalism, especially in connection with those who may face different material challenges. And they say something that in Latin America, we have known for decades, that service learning must not be a pursuit limited to the most privileged. All learners can contribute to a dialogical process of advancing well-being within their communities. And we have plenty of examples I would love to talk about, but I will just mention titles of a few. We have Native American children foresting the desert of the Puna and providing their neighbors with trees they have planted and cultivated, so their village is now a green oasis in the middle of the desert of the Puna. We have seen young people in the schools, in jail, learning how to use Braille to provide Braille text and books to the blind people library in their town, and finding dignity even in jail to be serving others. We have seen blind kids, 11-year-old, proposing their city to be signed in Braille and writing in Braille all year long the names of all the streets of their small city, and providing those tags to the technical school that printed those names in metal, and both schools offering these tags to the city. So they were the first city in Argentina, all signal in Braille. We have kids with Down syndrome doing service learning, taking care of the parks, building houses for people in need, building orthopedic things for elders. We have seen wonderful service learning projects, solidarity service learning projects performed by those kids that sometimes volunteers coming from the richest parts of the city consider them, oh, poor kids, you know, we have to help them. And they have the dignity not only to help themselves, but to help their community. So we are sure that solidarity is for everyone and gives everyone the dignity of being somebody who can better the world, no matter how young, how little, how poor, how special you are. So we have published a lot of publication in Spanish, but we have also publications in English on how to do the itinerary of a service learning project with the solidarity perspective. So I invite you to go to the Central and Eastern Europe manual in English, because it explains the solidarity perspective and the how to do in real life a service learning project. And I will finish with a phrase I like a lot, that solving the world's biggest problems now takes less soloists and more ensembles. And I think with solidarity, we are building ensembles able to solve the real problems in our world. Thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you so much, Nieves. It was a really interesting presentation.
Thank you.
I don't know how the others are feeling, but let's take for 2-3 minutes just to share in the chat anything. It can be aha moments, it can be questions, it can be reflections, it can be feelings, it can be sentences that stayed into your heart or into your head. Anything that you can take from Maria Nieves that stays with you right this moment. So just reflecting, and then we can start asking questions by chat. And for 10 more minutes, we have time to answer to the questions. Let's see. The chat is going. Really great and touching. We appreciate your passion and dedication. We are all diverse and we come from different countries, but we are united by the same universal values. And as you see, universal, it's written with caps lock. We have applauses. Thank you, Maria. Thank you so much for your experience-based samples. I got a lot of insights. Let's see the insights. Yes, it would be good to see what stayed with you. Yes, people want your presentation, maybe in PDF.
Yes.
The inspiration is Starting, a lot of applauses. Amazing, amazing. Thank you for the great example of horizontal solidarity. So please share with us more about how you felt, like what stayed with you, what impressed you the most. Thank you for non-egocentric approach. I appreciate your wisdom and how you explained complicated concepts with so much simplicity. Non-eurocentric, not egocentric. Correct. Thank you. Okay, let's see what other aha moments you had. Is it something that changed your perspective in any way? I can see it more than ever as an Argentinian living in Europe. Please share with us what you have in your mind. A new social contract for education, UNESCO. I really like this sentence, a beautiful definition of service learning. What other reflections? My most favorite aspect is a complete horizontal active inclusion, or givers and receivers. Doing everything with community, not for the community, will stay with me forever, and I will talk with my colleagues tomorrow. Very concrete. Very concrete. Great examples. Okay. Together we can transform and become agents of change in our community. Definitely changed my perspective as I struggle to fight my paternalistic tendencies.
Good.
Great. Also start thinking about questions, things that you would like to know more about the content, or how maybe Claes is doing the work in service learning. Somebody who already know you, it's always a pleasure to hear you. From Florentina. Let's see what interesting questions you have. We still have some time. Yes, we still have 10 minutes by our next presentation, and it would be interesting to know how Nieves challenged you. I'm a social worker in my country, in Turkey. We service to same population. How do you manage budget barriers? This is one question.
We listen to several questions, or I answer each question?
I think we can start answering the question by the time other questions are coming.
Okay. So in Latin America, we know very well that budget is always an issue. I imagine it's not so different in Turkey. But I think that an unseen advantage of working with the community and not for the community is, I have found times and times again, at least in our experience in Latin America, that once you establish a real conversation with the community, and they feel they own the projects and they are partners and not receivers, they may find creative ways to look for resources. I don't know if you're familiar with the Latin American food called empanadas. Empanadas is a traditional meat pie or ham and cheese pie. And I always say that no one in Latin America who has done volunteering has really done it until they had organized a selling of empanadas. Because we are always imagining new things to gather a little bit of money, and the easiest way is to sell empanadas. And so what I mean is, sometimes the community have resources that you cannot imagine. I've known wonderful service learning projects that started because the owner of the paint shop in the village offered the painting for them to start renewing a house, and that started a project of better housing and other people donated, and that became like a chain. Or a friend of the teacher donated a small amount of money for them to build a wheelchair for a girl who had had an accident and couldn't afford to rent a wheelchair. And so kids in the technical school built a wheelchair. And then the hospital of the city said, oh, these kids know how to do good wheelchairs. So we will provide them with the materials so they can learn how to do better wheelchairs. And that started a cycle where kids became specialized in wheelchairs, electronics, and such. So I know that when you are in the public sector, budget barriers are difficult. I was in the government during the Argentinian crisis of 2001, and I know I invented alliances, holy or non-holy, with several NGOs that provide us with the means to keep going with our service learning conference that this year made our 25th anniversary. But it made the 25th anniversary thanks to all the people who collaborate with very small amounts of money to keep it going during the economical crisis. So that would be my answer. And kids are very good gathering money. Don't forget kids.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank you, Maria. We have another question from Elizabeth. Did the perception or the need of service learning change during the last few years?
I think that the perception and the need of service learning became more apparent from the pedagogical point of view because of the success of Finland and project-based learning, and every country wants to be in the top 10 in PISA and all the rankings. And they discovered that countries that were doing well in education were using active pedagogies and working by projects. And service learning has the advantage that it's a project-based learning, it's a problem-based learning, requires research in the community, but also has this plus of citizenship values like solidarity, participation. So it's kind of the perfect combo. And that's why more and more countries and more teachers are embracing service learning. And I think the other reason is, even in countries where they don't have that much economical need, they have been through crisis in the last years. And they discover, oops, we also have poor people. And we also have some economical troubles. And they also discover, as some people in Spain told me once, that they had gone accustomed to a kind of citizenship, like citizenship was being a client to the government and not an active citizen participating in the common good and in the discussions and in the doing. And so they felt that in a world that is so polarized, where discussions are so ugly in the networks, that we need to go back to educating in solidarity values, because there are so many huge problems in the world that we will not be able to solve them from individual efforts. We only by solidarity efforts we could address the ecological crisis, the environmental problems, the social problems, even the political problems. So that's, I think, why service learning is growing.
Thank you. We also have in the chat a list of recommendations from Luz from Clais, which put some links to the resources. We also are going to put it on the Europe Talk Solidarity. Romina is going to say more after that. We also have a question from Oana from Romania. How can you promote the values and practices of service learning to schools and organizations? How can more organizations and young individuals become active in this field? if you have some examples, recommendation in the youth field.
Yes, I think that examples convince more than words. And I always recommend to start by showing examples. The closer to the community in place, the better. Or even examples from other parts of the world. But I think nothing convinces educators or youth activists than to see that it works in other parts. And that it is possible, because we are all kind of saturated of big words and theories and experts saying that everything you have done is wrong and you have to start over with this new thing I am selling. So I think that the best starting point is to ask, what are you already doing, how you can improve it? And so if you're already doing volunteering work, how can you improve the learning aspect of the volunteering? And if you are learning the lesson in the school, how can you use what you learn in the classroom to better what's outside of the classroom? So it's a question to start from what you have in front and tell them, not that you are not doing nothing or you are doing everything wrong, but what you are already doing, you can move forward to better things, to better places.
Mm-hmm. And maybe to add to the question is how we can find out more about that. You have the resources, but also I know for sure there are, even in our Zoom, practitioners who are doing service learning in a lot of the countries present here. So if you can research for organizations or schools or who already are doing service learning, I'm sure you can find also.
Of course, I was going to mention in the presentation that I will send to you, you will find a link to our map of networks, national and regional. So you can look for your country or your region and get in touch with a network that's already doing service learning. And having people in your region already doing it is a great, great contribution to the promotion of service learning.
Mm-hmm. We have also a nice comment. Sometimes it's really difficult to achieve agreements between some communities and many other sectors, mainly when some interests are stated by the powerful stakeholders.
Yes, of course. I once listened to a South African professor talking about the role of power in service learning projects. And we have to be aware that there are those who have the power and those who haven't. And that you have to take that into account, that resistance to change will always be there. And sometimes resistance to change is very strong, and you have to be very resilient. And let me share a very personal experience. I grew up during the dictatorship in Argentina. And I remember in a video club, they project a Polish film made by Andrew Wajda on Solidarność in Poland, and the story of Solidarność. And a foreign journalist was asking Wałęsa if he was not afraid of the Soviet tanks, and what would they do if the Soviet tanks arrived? And the answer was, well, if we don't get freedom now, we will get it next time. And for me, who was living, I was a young person and a young youth leader during a dictatorship, it gave me a lot of hope. Because even when you face the worst kind of power, the most authoritarian kind of power, you can have the hope that if you work together, if you do things right, sooner or later you will prevail. And now my kid says that, well, democracy is not everything and it's not enough and we should better democracy. And I completely agree. But our generation gave our kids 30 years of democracy, and that's not a little thing. So I think that when we face power, when we face difficulties, we should go through dialogue. We should do our best, knowing that changing the world is not always easy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Maria. We'll stay with this word, but also with I don't know, for me, it stayed in my mind that clever solidarity, it's an option to make this change together for the better. And now we're going to move the floor to Pierre Seyle, Program Manager of the Youth Policy and Program from the European Commission, to tell us a little bit about the new humanitarian aid strand. And maybe let's see if there are any connections with how Maria Nieves Tapia sees solidarity and the link with this program. Pierre is also going to be with us in the next webinar on 20th of December. I know for sure that you're going to have a lot of questions for him. So this is just like, how do you call it? Trailer. Trailer for the next webinar, and a space for us to become more curious. Pierre, you have the floor.
Thanks a lot, Maria. And first of all, I must say it's quite humbling to talk after Nieves, because she has so much experience and she has so many examples to provide. What I will be talking about very briefly is a new action that we are going to launch in a couple months, and which is a very tiny action, but we hope it will help. We've tried to build it in a spirit of horizontal solidarity, but we are Europeans, we are white, we are etc. So we can't ever be sure that we will not reproduce some of the practices of the past, or even if we will try strongly not to. We have a small presentation. Maybe I'll go through it, and as we go, I will try to highlight the connections with what Nieves said. So this is the new humanitarian aid strand of the European Solidarity Corps. I will not talk about the Solidarity Corps itself, because that would take too much time. So I will really focus on this new humanitarian aid strand and try to explain what it is and what we hope it can bring to the general picture, where there are already many volunteering initiatives at national level, at European level, and at the UN level, of course. Next slide, please. So what is it about? The idea is that the volunteers who will participate in this action will contribute to projects that facilitate the transition from the humanitarian response to long-term sustainable and inclusive development. So what does that mean? That means that we try to have a bridge between the immediate response after a disaster, for instance, and long-term development. So inside our office, we call it long-term humanitarian aid, even if this is a bit contradictory in terms, because in theory, humanitarian aid is getting quickly in, quickly out. This is not the case. This is projects that are built at least 1 year in advance. And so, of course, you can't plan a year in advance that there will be a disaster when the volunteers will be there. So this is also to strengthen the capacity and the resilience of the vulnerable communities. And among the 11 projects that have been selected to start, as I said, in 2-3 months, out of the 11, 9 are based on supporting capacity building of vulnerable communities. Next slide, please. It's also to reinforce disaster preparedness, because it's much less costly and more effective to prevent what might happen than to come in after it has happened. As I said, linking relief, rehabilitation, and development, that's the buzzword now. And also we are very concerned to make sure that our volunteers are always safe. Next slide, please. The aim, we have several aims actually with this action. We are in the youth department, and so it's focused on the young people. And the aim is twofold: to, at the same time, develop the skills of the young people who will be volunteering, and also to make sure that what they do has a useful impact on the local communities, useful and durable and sustainable, so that when they leave, the local communities will have learned and progressed. But at the same time, our volunteers will also have learned something by just volunteering, and also from the contact with the local populations, from who they will learn a lot. So that's where we hope it will be a horizontal solidarity. It's not just young Westerners, young Europeans coming and explaining to local communities what they should do. It's also them learning from these local communities who know a lot. And there is another dimension, we will come to it a bit later, but I already want to raise it, is that we want this action to be very inclusive. Inclusive meaning that we will not send only brilliant university young people. We will also send people with much fewer opportunities of any kind, including people with disabilities, including people from very unfavored social backgrounds. And so we hope that with this, also the image of the EU, the image of our program, by sending not homogeneous, brilliant young people, but people from all backgrounds and who have themselves experienced difficulties. We hope that these people will present another image of the EU, not a paternalistic, sorry, not that kind of image, but image of people who have had problems, who have, and for whom volunteering can help them also overcome their own problems. By helping the others, they can help themselves. And I always remember a former volunteer telling me, who was disabled, she was blind, and saying, well, we also have the right to help. We're not just, we don't have only the right to receive help, but we also have the right to help. And I think this is a very, very important feature of our action, is that we want this help to be multifaceted and not one-way stream. Next slide, please. So the goals, as I said, is that the young people we send can acquire competences for their personal and socio-educational development, but also that they increase their self-empowerment and their self-esteem. This is very important. If they see that they can help people who are in need, we believe that it will also increase their own self-confidence, and that when they return, they will be able to do a lot of things that they may have not thought they would be able to do. And that by volunteering, they will realize that they can do a lot of things. And then we hope it will enhance their employability. Yes, volunteering is to help others, but it's also to help yourself. And if by helping others, they become more employable on the market, on the jobs market, which is a market, even if they stay in NGOs and in the helping world, well, at least this will help them follow up their career and their own personal development. And also there is a civic dimension, citizen dimension. We want to help these young Europeans to become better citizens also when they come back to their own community. Next slide, please. So what are we talking about? The individual volunteering can last from 2 to 12 months, and volunteering in teams from 2 weeks to 2 months, with up to 40 participants. And there's a lot of side activities. One important thing is that the organizations that will send the volunteers will need to have a quality label. We are it is very important for us to make sure that the NGOs provide a good quality and a good mentorship to the volunteers, so that the volunteers are not just a human resource added on top of something that exists, but that the projects are built around the volunteers, so that the volunteers are at the center of the action, and that they get the proper support, pedagogical, emotional, professional, whatever support they need to get from the local host organization. And in these projects, there is always a local organization, which is not the subsidiary of a big NGO. So we have European NGOs involved, but we also need local NGOs, independent local NGOs. And they can apply to get this quality label and participate in these projects, and then host volunteers on the ground. Next slide, please. So the age limit is 35 years old. The age limit for the Solidarity Corps in general is 30, but for this action is 35. So it's really focused on young people. This is a difference with the previous program that was managed in the past by DG ECHO and by DG AC afterwards, there was no age limit. And so sometimes there were some real professionals that were sent, volunteers, of course, that were sent in projects around the world. Now we focus really, we are the service for education, and so we focus really on young people. Social inclusion, I mentioned it, education, competence development, and recognition. Next slide, please. Volunteers will be trained thoroughly before they leave. They will go through a self-assessment to make sure they know what they're doing. Then those who, after the self-assessment, feel they want to continue, they will have to go through an online training of 25 hours. And if they succeed after that, they will go through a face-to-face training where they will learn intercultural relation. They will learn to avoid behaving like a white savior. They will learn to interact with very different communities. And we believe it's essential that they don't, just be sent out on the other side of the world without any preparation. We find this is very key, so that they can behave properly also, so that they know what to do and what not to do. Next slide, please. So where does it take place? In third countries where humanitarian aid activities take place and where there are no armed conflicts. So we will not send young people in the middle of a war. That is a key rule. We will never do that. The next deadline for project proposals is in May, so there's still time. And the budget for the action is almost 7 million in 23. So 7 million is not huge, but we hope we can make a very little difference in the big world of solidarity and the big world of volunteering. It is a tiny action, and we are very humble. We know that a lot has taken place. We don't pretend we're going to change the world or whatever. We just hope we can add a little bit with the right spirits and the right approach. So I don't know if Nieves will qualify what we do as service learning, but we believe there are a lot of connections. And just to conclude, we will have among the organizations that have already received the quality label, we have a quarter coming from Latin America and around a quarter coming from Africa out of 86. So I think that shows that we try to balance the action. We need local organizations in all continents, because if we don't have them, we don't have projects. It is compulsory to have a local host organization, and again, which is not a subsidiary of a Western NGO. And then here all the details. I'm sure this will be put on the site. This is how you can get more information. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Pierre. It was a short introduction, and definitely I see the link. I have the impression or the feeling that Nieves took us through what it means clever solidarity through service learning, where I think we understood the principle, and it's so good to see that the European Commission have a program where somehow is trying to bring the values of clever solidarity, let's say, into the work of volunteering and community work. More from Pierre, you're going to hear in the next webinar next week. Before I will hand the last word to Romina to close our webinar, we would love to have a short evaluation. And our colleague Elizabeth is going to show you a link to a Mentimeter where you shortly can evaluate for us and for Nieves and for Pierre, how was this webinar for you? It was a short one, but let's see how this impacted you. Elizabeth? No?
Maybe I can continue as I have the
lost
spotlight on me. Wow, I feel very humble and honored that I had the chance to share this space with so many inputs. Thank you very much, Nieves. Thank you very much, Pierre. I think it's a nice balance between learning from the ones that are doing service learning and also knowing that there is even a modest investment from the European Commission side, but still there is an investment in promoting solidarity and horizontal solidarity. We hope in countries out of Europe, and this is a mutual exchange. I think that also the webinar itself, it's an exchange. I don't know if Nieves, you would like to say anything at the end, if you would like to communicate anything to the group.
I was writing in the chat that Pierre, of course, I think it's a service learning experience, and I was very happy to see that you have include a strong learning component, because we have seen how bad it can be for young people coming to our countries not to be prepared enough. So I think that's very, very important. And I think it's very important, this approach, that they are aware that they will be learning from the community and stressing horizontal relationships. I think that's great. And I think if it's useful for you, we can use our social media.
Please do. Please do.
To get the word around. No, I would only like to thank you all. You have been very, very kind in your comments. And I have to say, for us, it was a wonderful learning experience when we started to work with Central and Eastern Europe, because we learned so much. We learned that even if we were far away, our history made us very close to each other, because all our countries have suffered similar problems, even from different ideological points of view. And I'm really glad that your network is moving forward, and that you are participating in this wider European network. And I do hope the collaboration between the Latin American networks and your networks will keep going for the common good. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you so much, Nieves. And maybe if you can stay for 20 more seconds to fill the evaluation for us would be very helpful. The link is in the chat. You can go now on the link. Is there? Please fill the short evaluation. It's a Mentimeter. It's a question. Actually, it's 3 questions with a scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Let's see if we can share also the screen so we can see the answers. We can see people still putting comments on chat. This is really good. That means that